Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're going to be talking about 3 big mess-ups that happened over at the failing New York Times this past week, which could be causing the whole paper to break down. For those who don't know, the New York Times is an American newspaper based in New York City with worldwide influence and readership. Founded in 1851, the paper has won 127 Pulitzer Prizes, more than any other newspaper. The Times is ranked 18th in the world by circulation and 3rd in the US. It also was formerly a newspaper of note and record in America and in the world, but a lot has changed there in recent years, to say the least. With the dawn of the digital age, old traditional legacy papers like the Times have been pushed aside in a lot of ways. Internet, news sites, notifications, and Twitter have taken over people's news and information needs. This has forced older newspapers like the New York Times to get desperate and more extreme as a way to try and stay relevant and still make money. And the way the New York Times has chosen to do this was to become starkly more left-wing and also more overtly political and liberal biased. Gone are the days that the Times and other newspapers at least try to look and seem unbiased or bipartisan. No, now the Times are basically a mouthpiece for the Democratic Party, supporting them by not only ignoring their errors, but also by propping up liberal heroes and leaders, supposed ones, despite their gross histories, as you'll soon see. But first, we're going to talk about a case where the New York Times is attacking conservatives and our people based on totally unproven and fabricated stories and other bullshit, stuff that wasn't properly sourced or fact-checked either, or tested or verified at all. Not very journalistic of these journalists, but hey, as I said, they're hardly even real reporters there anymore at this point. They're more like propagandists pushing for liberal causes. They're activists, not journalists with integrity. Our first of these 3 mess-ups this week involves more baseless accusations being thrown at Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Most of you probably recall his lengthy and controversial Supreme Court nomination and eventual approval that happened around this time last year. Kavanaugh was drugged through the mud back then, with liberals lying about him left and right, making up false, unproven accusations every chance they could. And this was all done not because the Democrats care about the truth or they want to get justice for these supposed victims. No, they clearly just don't like Kavanaugh because he's conservative. And he's being nominated by Trump too, so of course, as they say, orange man bad. He bad, bad, bad. No, no, no. Regardless, the left went off on Brett Kavanaugh for months last year. But despite this intense struggle, Kavanaugh still succeeded, and of course, he was approved for the Supreme Court as he should have been. The guy literally did nothing wrong. The worst they could actually get on Brett was he possibly did some drinking and partying in college, like everyone else has. What a joke. And quite frankly, I would be more worried if he didn't party in college, if we're being honest. But much like with the 2016 election, the left just can't let this Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination loss, well, they can't let that go either. That's why last week, the New York Times thought it would be a good idea to publish even more lies about Brett K. Almost a year after his approval, many other liberals were also happy to jump on this supposed new breaking story, as their hatred for right-wingers can never really be quenched. But this would come back to bite them all in the ass very shortly too, as the New York Times had to issue a very damning correction on this new story that basically said the supposed victim of it didn't recall the supposed incident at all. What? For more details, let's turn to an article from Fox News called New York Times Updates Kavanaugh Bombshell to note Accuser Doesn't Recall Alleged Assault. Check this bullshit out. The New York Times suddenly made a major revision to a supposed bombshell piece late Sunday concerning a resurfaced allegation of sexual assault by Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh. Hours after virtually all 2020 Democratic presidential candidates had cited the original article as a reason to impeach Kavanaugh. The update included the significant detail that several friends of the alleged victim said she did not recall the purported sexual assault in question at all. The Times also stated for the first time that the alleged victim refused to be interviewed and has made no comment about the episode. The only first-hand statement concerning the supposed attack in the original piece, which was published on Saturday, came from a Clinton-connected lawyer who claimed to have witnessed it. Wow. Just wow. So the supposed victim of this new allegation does not recall the incident at all. And to make matters even worse, if it could get any worse, well, the only so-called witness is a Clinton-connected lawyer with political motivations to try and slam an opponent like Kavanaugh. Priceless. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. More proof the left is corrupt in 2019. And it sounds like this whole new bombshell story is another nothing burger, just like every other accusation against Kavanaugh. Don't know why the left is bringing back this dead meme now anyway. It's like if, say, in the NFL, the Broncos lost the Super Bowl, and then about a year later they complained about it again, saying the other team cheated, but their only witness witness to that cheating was a super hardcore Broncos fan who would clearly lie and say anything to help his team in this situation. And this isn't even mentioning the fact that even if this new so-called bombshell story was true, the actual allegation isn't even that bad. I can't get into too much detail about it without getting demonetized or flagged, but basically there was no sex or assault involved in the story. What we're actually talking about is someone getting naked at a party as a prank, which is a pretty common kind of joke at college campuses, which is where this alleged act occurred, if it actually happened, which it didn't. And also, this alleged incident happened over 30 years ago, allegedly, which is not only well beyond the statute of limitations, but also, that's a lifetime ago as well. People change over 3 decades, and we all certainly grow up after graduating from college, getting our careers and our lives started. But that is all assuming this event is even true to begin with. And as I said, even if it did happen, it wasn't even that bad, nor was it even a crime. But to make matters even worse, the whole thing was likely just made up anyway, or at the very least, there's no actual proof or credible witnesses who can confirm it took place at all. Regardless of all that though, the New York Times still went with this bogus story. And as the Fox article said, all of the Democratic presidential candidates gladly hopped onto this let's lie about our opponents thing too. Other prominent Democrats got in on this as well, including our least favorite, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She tweeted this monstrosity, which became so controversial, AOC actually deleted the tweet. Then she reposted it again because of course she did. We all know AOC can't resist lying about her opponents, or lying about anything if she thinks it will help get her way. Her tweet reads, "This was almost a year ago. It is unsurprising that Kavanaugh, credibly accused of sexual assault, would lie under oath to secure a Supreme Court seat, because sexual assault isn't a crime of passion. It's about the abuse of power. He must be impeached." Credibly accused, you say? I'm not even sure what that really means. I do know that you, AOC, have been credibly accused of many things, including campaign finance violations. She overspent and squandered a lot of her money that she raised for her political campaign, and there's more credible proof than this fake, bogus witness that the New York Times brought up. There's obvious proof that AOC mishandled her funds, so by her own logic, Alex should be expelled from Congress then. I mean, she did say accusations mean the person is guilty, essentially, but really, AOC, of course, expects the privileges of America's justice system. Namely, people are innocent until proven guilty here. Accusations in the real world don't actually mean shit. And AOC knows this, of course, too, since she easily brushes off accusations against herself and other liberals, like, for example, Bill Clinton, who has had many sexual assault allegations against him. But if a Republican or conservative-friendly person gets an accusation, like, say, Supreme Court Justice Brett Kavanaugh, well, when he gets accused, then he's automatically guilty according to the left-wingers. Because if they hate you or disagree with your politics, that means you get no benefit of the doubt anymore. And this all goes to show how corrupt the left, AOC, and the New York Times actually are. But wait a second, we're only getting started here actually. The New York Times has 2 more big screw-ups from last week to go over, so let's go ahead and see how bad and terrible they've actually become. Just a few days before this Kavanaugh story fell apart, last Wednesday our country mourned its 18th anniversary of 9/11. Rest in peace to all the victims. And many take this day to be patriotic and reverent and to take some time to remember all those wonderful Americans we lost on that fateful day. The New York Times took things a different way though. Instead of at least staying silent, the New York Times decided to chime in with its bullshit. And they chimed in such a disgusting, disrespectful, revisionist history influence-like way, they eventually had to backpedal once again and correct themselves too. The New York Times original tweet, which is now deleted, well, it initially said, 18 years have passed since airplanes took aim and brought down the World Trade Center. Today, families will once again gather and grieve at the site where more than 2,000 people died. Sounding very much like an Ilhan Omar reaction to 9/11. She became pretty infamous for characterizing that terrible event as just some people that did something. And it looks like the New York Times is choosing to go down this politically correct route to address the situation as well. And well, I hate to break it to you guys, but those planes didn't take aim and crash into the towers all by themselves. They were actually hijacked by Islamic terrorists, who then took aim at the World Trade Center and murdered thousands of people. Not sure why these liberals are trying to downplay this horrific attack on America, but I think it has something to do with liberals being pro-Muslim, and they also have a knack for rewriting our history. And this is to be expected coming from a mouth-breathing politician like Ilhan Omar, who's from a terrorist-run country herself. But the New York Times, they're American, and they're based in New York City itself, of course, which is obviously where these attacks took place. But instead of remembering who did what that day, the New York Times is downplaying the villains in this story, and they're pretty much doing the opposite of the whole motto, never forget. Finally, we have one more equally disturbing tweet from the New York Times to go over, and this one they had to delete in shame as well. Here's a screenshot of the now deleted tweet which read, "Mao Zedong died on this day in 1976. The Times said he began as an obscure peasant and died one of history's great revolutionary figures." Jesus, leave it to the New York frickin' Times to reference a violent authoritarian leader whose policies killed millions, and they're making him look like he's a hero. What a goddamn joke. And for those of you who don't know, Mao's communist policy plan was called Great Leap Forward, and historians estimate it led to the death of over 45 million people back in the day. To put that into context, these deaths vastly outnumber those killed by the Soviet Union under Stalin, which caused about 20 million people to die. Even the Holocaust has lower numbers than this, killing about 11 million, so not sure supporting Mao, who killed much more, is the best take or tone to have here. He killed 4 times as many people as the Germans did in World War II, but for some reason, the New York Times is praising him. In the end, these terrible errors in judgment and the questionable loyalties and agendas just keep getting worse for the New York Times. First, they're caught lying about a Supreme Court justice for being conservative, then they're trying to downplay the villains who killed thousands of people on September 11th. Finally, they worship and praise a communist leader who caused the deaths of over 45 million. What the hell is going on here? The New York Times is just the worst, and they're completely dead to me, and they're also clearly breaking down. And if you're watching still, after seeing what we just saw, the New York Times should be dead to all of you too. Think about it. These are just the lies and half-truths and manipulations and propaganda that we caught them reporting. Who knows how many other things the New York Times have lied or misled us about? Not to mention, their whole operation and motivation and credibility is all coming into question. And I don't think these kinds of gross errors are something a newspaper should be able to bounce back from. If they weren't so old and well-renowned, the New York Times would have had to shut down years ago. Any other so-called news outlet would be shamed and run into the ground because of errors like this, but alas, the left-wingers keep their beloved New York Times going anyway, because they use it as a way to provide liberals with some sort of assumed credibility, because the paper supports them and the New York Times has a legacy that is undeniably long and sometimes great. But in my opinion, this legacy has been ruined for a long time now, and it's been tarnished and battered and beat down far beyond repair. What do you guys think? Did the New York Times have a pretty bad week or what? Or is this just normal for them in their biased hack reporting ways? Do you think they're breaking down, or will they continue to keep going despite all these failures? Comment your thoughts on everything below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see y'all next time.